All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RevOps Demos That Don't Suck. I am Matthew Baum, CEO and co-founder of RevOps Co-op, a community of 10,000 plus revenue operations folks from all across the globe. And today we are talking with Cam England, who is a sales team manager over at Clozd. Clozd is an official partner of RevOps Co-op and provides win-loss analysis for B2B companies out there. But before I tell you more about Clozd or about Cam, I'm just going to turn it over to him. And Cam, maybe give us a quick introduction on yourself, personally, professionally, and then tell us a little bit more about Clozd before I start to pepper you with kind of questions on the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Cam, born and raised here in Utah. So with that, love all things outdoors. Got to make sure that I enjoy the mountains that are so close to us. Have a family, so a lot of time spending the evenings and weekends playing with the little kids. And I've been at Clozd for a little over 5 years. So I've been on the sales side here at Clozd for 5 years. So had a lot of conversations with different RevOps leaders when it comes to win-loss and helping improve some of their current strategies and processes related to win-loss.
That's awesome. And so you've got tons of experience in the win-loss space and experience at Clozd. So before we get into the product and the solution, I always like to start with the problem. Tell us a little bit about, for folks in RevOps that are out there, RevOps leaders, what are some things that they might be experiencing today, problems, challenges that they might be having around win-loss, where, Clozd can potentially, come in and help?
Yeah. So to start things off is kind of a brief explanation there. When it comes to win-loss analysis, it's a little bit of an umbrella term. At the end of the day, the whole goal of win-loss analysis is to answer the questions of why are you winning sales opportunities? Why are you losing sales opportunities? And what can you do in order to win more? And it's especially pertinent, in the current environment, especially for any RevOps folks that are working in tech, is how can we maximize the at-bats that we have? There's only so many levers that you can pull to increase pipeline. So really, what else can you do in order to increase the effectiveness of how you're managing that pipeline, i.e. improving win rates? So where we come into play and where we help is a lot of organizations, if they're asked those questions around why are we winning and losing deals? Why are we losing to this competitor? What's going on there? There's not a lot of really clear, concise information that can be actioned, that stuff or something can be done as a result. There's a lot of anecdotes that come from the sales team. There's limited reporting functionality or information that can be collected from the CRM. And because of those limitations, a lot of RevOps individuals are, to a degree, operating in the dark when they're trying to answer those questions of why are we winning and losing and what should we be doing differently? So that's where Clozd comes into play, and we can certainly get into that. But we help companies take it a step further where they're not just relying on CRM data, sales rep feedback, other anecdotes, but we're actually going directly to the buyers, to the decision makers at won and lost opportunities and collecting feedback from them to understand why they made the decision that they did. So we bring that all together, we aggregate it so you can see at a high level what are those different factors that are ultimately driving won and lost business. And it becomes particularly pertinent to RevOps, given that, oftentimes they'll typically, roll up to sales or what may be, but there's so much cross-functional involvement when it comes to RevOps, making sure that marketing's dialed in, that sales is dialed in, that customer success is dialed in, that win-loss really fits nicely on the RevOps plate. Because of the feedback that we produce and kind of the influence that it has on all of those different parts of the business.
Yeah, makes tons of sense. I think we every business out there, every company out there understands or knows what their win rate is, right? Mm-hmm. 35%, 30%, 25%. But the minute you start to ask that next question of, well, why is it 35%, or why did it go up, or why did it go down quarter over quarter, month over month, year over year? That's what you're like, I don't know. It's like, that's a great question, right? But how do you figure that out? So, and I think every RevOps person gets asked those questions. And so maybe that's a good opportunity where if you want to kind of pull up your screen and maybe start walking through the product a little bit, because you hit on the solution a little bit, but maybe you can provide some context there. So when RevOps folks are faced with those questions that they ultimately get, right? Why is our win rate what it is? Why did it go up? Why did it go down? How does Clozd help answer those questions?
Yep. So we'll jump into the platform. Before we jump into that, as a little bit of context, I think it's helpful to lay the groundwork in terms of how we actually go out and collect this buyer feedback. So if I'm a RevOps specialist and I get asked that question, whether it be following a board meeting or the VP of sales or whatever is asking those questions about, hey, what's happening in this geo? Why is this win rate decreasing? What's going on against this competitor? Typically, I'll go and turn to the CRM and I'll get some level of information. I can see that we're losing based on price, or I can see that sales reps are marking, a lack of functionality or whatever it may be. Whatever that workflow is that a sales rep fills out as they close out an opportunity. But that tells you what happened, but it doesn't tell you why. So that's why, again, we feel it's so important to go directly to those buyers or those decision makers and ask them that same question, why you made that decision that you did. But there's some natural limitations. If I am an individual in RevOps or even another function within the organization, there's different limiting factors of why it doesn't always make sense for me to go and conduct that buyer-facing analysis. The most primary reason is if I am going to go talk with a buyer that just told my sales team no, there's a certain barrier that goes up. There's a tendency to withhold key information if, Matt is coming to me to ask why I just told his sales rep no. And so that's commonly why a company will turn to a third party like Clozd to go and act as that neutral group, that neutral individual, to go and have a conversation with these buyers from a won and lost opportunity. So it varies a little bit depending on what the composition of a company's pipeline looks like, but we'll go and approach these decision makers through a combination of either interviews, so like a 30-minute Zoom call, or a survey. So there's, some different methodology components to consider there, but those are kind of the method of outreach that we'll go and approach these decision makers with. And then I'll pull up the tool here and we can kind of walk through a quick demo there of how we bring all that information together.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how much you can share on the data points that you collect during those interviews, but how I'll say, like, how successful are you in getting some of that data from these lost opportunities? Is it like 50% of the time you get responses, 25% of the time? Like how, what's your call it win rate on those things?
Yeah, we call it our participation rate. So if we're going to reach out to 10 people, how many are going to take us up on the invitation to go participate in an interview? It varies industry to industry. So on one end of the spectrum, clients that we work with that are in or sell to like market researchers, they have a much higher propensity. They're always interested in like the latest and greatest, research tools. So we'll see like a 50 or 60% response rate when it comes to, market researchers or similar titles. We have other clients that are in cybersecurity, for example. And so the individuals that they're selling to naturally are a little bit more reserved, have less of a tendency to kind of hop on a call and share this information. So it's not uncommon that we'll see like a 10 or 12% participation rate with cybersecurity individuals. Yeah. For most clients, if you want a broad number, we'll typically see about like a 20 to 25% response rate. Cool.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I can definitely see how it would fluctuate with the persona. And so that's some great context to kind of lead into I guess some of the data points that you collect, and then I assume you're probably leveraging a bunch of different data points from the CRM of the customer, right? So maybe if you want to kind of share your screen or open things up and kind of walk through the platform a little bit, but tell us like how do you bring all that stuff together and make the magic happen?
Yep. So as I pull this up, the way that we like to function is we want to operate in the background. So as the sales team's working, as they're closing out opportunities throughout the quarter, throughout the year, we want to be providing back to the organization a steady stream of these findings that we're producing as we go and interview and survey these won and lost prospects. So the way that we do that is we'll tie in with an organization CRM, and we'll essentially set up some rules or some parameters. So as an opportunity closes, you can flag it as an opportunity that you either want Clozd to go and interview or that you want us to go and survey. So if you think, at least at a high level, if we kind of look at the methodology there, interviews, they're the richest, most in-depth source of feedback. So you want to focus those on whatever your most strategic deals are. And I'll use strategic loosely. That can be whatever you want. It could be deals of a certain size. It could be deals where a certain competitor was involved in a certain geography, whatever you want that to mean. Surveys are a great tool to make sure that your program has scale and no opportunity gets left behind. So any opportunity that you're not targeting for an interview, let's go and send them a survey. So we can set up these workflows where if an opportunity is above 50K and it made it to at least this stage in the sales cycle, we deem that, a high priority opportunity. We want Clozd to go and reach out and see if they'll participate in an interview, a separate workflow where all other opportunities get sent a survey. So that's kind of how we operate in the background. So again, as a sales rep closes out an opportunity, that opportunity can be pushed through one of those two workflows. We'll get alerted, we'll start our outreach process, and then again, deliver kind of that steady flow of these win-loss insights as the sales team is doing their thing and closing out opportunities.
Yep.
So I'll pull this up here. And so what we're looking at and where we'll start, because it's kind of the building block or the foundation of the information that we produce, is an individual interview report. So for every opportunity that Clozd goes out and conducts an interview with, this is the type of deliverable that we publish back to our client. So again, with that CRM integration, that's what you see here with some of these metadata fields. So we can pull in any number of metadata fields from the CRM that help give context to a particular opportunity. Who was the sales rep? What was the region? What products were they evaluating? What was the segment? Any of those helpful fields to understand a little bit more about, what was the makeup of this opportunity with the Aldo group. We'll jump into some other areas as well where these become kind of twofold helpful. But if we stick with this individual opportunity report, again, it's a 30-minute conversation that we ask these buyers to participate in. So what you see here with this summary is the Reader's Digest version. So if I'm heading into a meeting with the VP of sales, or I'm in between calls or whatever it may be, I can pull this up on my phone. I can get that Reader's Digest version, and I can have a good high-level understanding of what were the major takeaways of the interview that Clozd conducted with John Doe from the Aldo group. The next thing that we do is we tag what we refer to as decision drivers. So this is where we actually start to put a name to what were the different factors that had both a positive and a negative influence on the outcome of this buyer's decision. And so we'll defend each of those with a quote from the interview. So you can see in the buyer's own words, okay, as it relates to knowledge and expertise, what was it specifically that buyer was referring to? Or demo customization, what was the issue that they had there? Or even though we lost this deal, what was it about our geographic footprint that this buyer still cited as a positive despite not moving forward with us? And then there's more raw data that you can dive into. So you'll have both the audio of that interview if you want to listen along in more of a podcast format to that interview, as well as the actual transcript. So if you want to dive into that, you want to read word for word, kind of the back and forth question and answer, you can do so there as well. The other thing that I'll call out is you'll see that we break this interview into different kind of headings or major topics, and then you'll see the more specific questions that we ask. And the reason I want to point that out is we don't go into these interviews, just shooting from the hip and asking, a bunch of one-off random questions, but understanding what are the overall goals and objectives with this win-loss effort helps us work with the client to shape what we refer to as an interview guide. So I don't know what happened with the lights, Matt. There's a pause. I'm going to go turn it on. It's the second time that happened to me. Happened yesterday. We just got timers on all the lights, and
Yeah, you got to be
lucky.
more active like this.
I got to find out where the sensor is first.
Yeah.
So I'll just go back 30 seconds as we talk through.
Yep.
Kind of the questions and answers here. So.
Yep. Sounds good.
So the thing that you'll notice with this transcript here is we have it broken out into different headings or different topics, and then you'll see the specific questions that get asked on each interview. And the reason I point that out is going into these interviews, we don't just want to shoot from the hip and ask, whatever question comes to mind. But as part of kicking off a new program, one of the things that we collaborate with our new client on is what we refer to as an interview guide. So making sure that there's very close alignment with what are the major questions and topics that you want us to dive into on these interviews to make sure that we're getting answers to. So that's what you see reflected here. So again, you can jump into different topics related to the product or related to, the sales process or the pricing, the competitive landscape, whatever it may be, and get a really thorough understanding from the buyer's perspective. What were all of those different factors that ultimately had an influence on their final decision? So as a RevOps leader, as an individual sales rep, even, this becomes really powerful as a very thorough postmortem to understand, hey, for this individual opportunity, what went well, what didn't go so well, what can I learn from it? And then where this platform and where the tool really becomes powerful is looking at things on an aggregated level. So not just seeing, hey, what happened with this individual interview, but what are we consistently hearing and learning from our buyers? So that's what you see here as we go over to this decision drivers tab. This is where we see an aggregation of all of the feedback that's been collected from the program. So you can see from the one opportunities that get analyzed, what are the most common positive decision drivers from those one opportunities. You can dig into each of those and you can see the direct quotes from every interview and survey, where in this case, the user experience and interface was highlighted as a positive reason, they moved forward with the organization. Why we lose looks only at the loss opportunities. What are the most common negative drivers from those losses? What are the exact quotes from the buyers that cited that as being an issue why they didn't move forward? And then as I, if I think about is putting myself in the shoes of someone in RevOps, part of my job is to play a little bit of quarterback with kind of data among the teams. And so if I get a question from the product team or from the sales team or from the marketing team, this can be one of the tools or one of the data sets that I can rely on when it comes to answering very specific questions from those different groups around, hey, why are we winning and losing? Maybe I have a product manager that's coming to me and saying, hey, do we have any idea what sort of influence the product is having on the outcome of these deals? Do buyers perceive it as a strength? Do they perceive it as a weakness? How do they view us versus other competitors? So again, I can come in here and I can see a breakdown of all of the product or platform related feedback that's been collected from buyers and provide to my business leaders very specific information about how buyers perceive the product, how they are experiencing the sales process, what they think of the pricing and packaging, so on and so forth. And again, a lot of it always comes back to, I'll kind of again highlight these quotes of layering in this rich qualitative feedback on top of some of that quantitative feedback that's more readily available, as we go and report or run those reports from the CRM, for example. So that's where the real richness of these programs come from, is being able to read in the buyer's own words, hey, how exactly do they perceive us? What are they talking about in terms of our strengths and weaknesses? And if we want to compete more effectively, what do we need to do differently?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess two follow-up questions. So who's if we think about types of companies or accounts that are typically a good fit for a product like Clozd, what are the company account characteristics that would indicate someone would be a good fit for a product or solution like this? And then if you can mention any kind of current customers or logos, that would be great. And then I'm curious for folks who are currently customers, how are they, what are some of the things that they're doing to action on the data that they have here? I'm always curious about how folks are kind of tactically using some of the really rich like feedback that you all are getting? It's one thing to kind of review the like the reports and kind of have access to a bunch of data that you didn't have access to before, but I'm curious how some of those current customers are actioning on the data points and the feedback that you all provide them.
Yeah, that's a great question. Half of the equation is collecting the information, but the more important half of the equation is what do you do as a result. In terms of who's a fit for Clozd, kind of what's our bread and butter. By far, we predominantly play in the B2B space, working with organizations that have a formal go-to-market strategy that involves a sales team or a sales rep. So as far as we don't play quite as well for businesses that have like a very transactional pipeline, where it's kind of like a one-stop shop. I go on the website, I order whatever SKU or whatever it may be. Not as much of a fit there, because if you come back to kind of the methodology, the foundation of what we want to go and do is conduct an interview, conduct a rich conversation with these individuals. And there's got to be enough substance to that conversation. So, if I browse a website, a couple of clicks, and I've made my purchase, probably not a fit there. It's not really going to merit, a in-depth conversation, probably better suited with a pure, survey tool. So as far as beyond that, we play really well in the SaaS space. So a lot of enterprise software clients are who we predominantly work with, Qualtrics, Tableau, Alteryx, Workato are a few examples that come to mind that, again, have that very formal go-to-market strategy. There's a lot of involvement from the sales rep. There's usually at least a handful of stakeholders that are involved from the buyer's perspective. It's more of a complex sell. To your other question about kind of actioning the information, there's a lot of different approaches that companies can take. So the way that we structure our programs is we don't cap or charge based on the number of users here in the platform. So you have unlimited licenses. So a lot of clients take the approach of they swing open the doors and anyone and everyone that wants to come in and understand what it is that we're hearing and learning from buyers. We set up SSO, they have their company login and they can come into the platform and kind of as a self-serve model, come in and read the information. Another recommendation that we'll typically make, especially to make sure that we're meeting users where they're at, and this feedback and information is getting into the right hands, is some really nice integrations if you're using a Slack or Teams in terms of like an internal communication tool. There's some really great integrations there where we can set up dedicated channels for win-loss and pipe in the feedback and send periodic push reports to those channels. So rather than relying solely on the platform here, you can get a weekly or monthly summary of, hey, what's the latest learnings from Clozd? What are we learning from our buyers there? What oftentimes is most impactful is we actually like to coordinate conference calls where, as the company that's conducting this research, that's having these conversations with the buyer, we like to set up periodic, sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly conference calls where we can do more of a formal presentation to the organization around, hey, this is what we're learning from your buyers. This is what they're talking about in terms of your strengths, of your weaknesses. These are the most common competitors that we're noticing surfacing on these calls. And that gives us a chance to make sure we're driving some really great discussion around what it is that we're learning from this program. In conjunction with that, we'll typically put together like an executive summary report that'll recap or highlight, the last month, the last quarter's worth of findings. So no company strategy is the same. Each of the programs that we design is a little bit unique in terms of the deliverables, in terms of, how often we're making those presentations, what sort of integrations we're tapping into to deliver the feedback. But it all comes back to how do we make sure that the right users are getting access to this feedback so that they can go and do something about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I saw one of the testimonials on your website. One of the quotes that I thought, at least for me, resonated, given that I am a sports fan, is I think they said, every professional sports team out there will watch film, right? And kind of do a review to understand how they perform. And when you're selling is your sport, right? And why should it be any different? And Clozd kind of provides that quote unquote film review sort of session for them. And yeah, I like that a lot, because again, in the in the world of continuous improvement and understanding why things work and why things don't. That's really the only way that you can kind of get better and produce better results, like you said, with kind of every at bat that you get. And so you mentioned, so I guess a couple of follow-up questions. You mentioned pricing a little bit. You said nothing on a per user sort of basis. So what can you share about kind of pricing and how you all charge, how someone in RevOps should be thinking about that? And then how do you mentioned some really kind of impressive customers, folks like Qualtrics, Tableau. How do customers typically evaluate ROI on a solution like Clozd as well?
Yeah. So in terms of pricing structure, we're pretty upfront and transparent. We like to make it simple and easy. So there's two factors that contribute to the cost of a program with Clozd. One is a flat software component, and the other is a per interview cost. So it's a combination of those two factors. There's economies of scale there. So the larger the number of interviews that you contract for, the more favorable of a per interview cost you have there. But to give you a ballpark idea, it's not uncommon for companies to start with like a 3-month pilot with Clozd that will range anywhere from 20 to 40K in terms of spend. Most companies mature into an annual spend, a larger program of between 90 and 120K is what they're typically looking at on an annual basis. So again, that comes down to your pipeline. What does that pipeline look like? How many opportunities do you potentially want to go and interview? How many do we want to go and survey? What's the composition there? But those are some benchmark numbers that the individuals can kind of work off if they're evaluating, what's the appetite? What would it look like for us to get more formal about our win-loss program? Remind me the second question, Matt. I'm drawing a blank.
So if that was if that's the investment that folks are making, how do folks kind of look at ROI? Evaluate, calculate ROI?
Yeah. So one of the best ones, or one of the maybe what comes to mind quickest, is an increase in win rate. Because again, going back to those initial questions that we're trying to answer through this win-loss program is, why do you win? Why do you lose? And what can you do differently in order to win more? We want to measure change and verify, hey, quarter after quarter, are we actioning on those items? Are we hearing repetitive themes, which is an indication that we're not making needed changes? Because ultimately what we want to see is, hey, we know we're losing because of XYZ. Let's go and address that. Let's revisit this in 2 quarters and verify, has our win rate changed? If we still look at our North American enterprise deals, do we have the same win rate, or is that win rate increased? So that's a very common measure of ROI, is what's the change in win rate over time. But there's also some other kind of tangential ROIs that I always love to see and love to hear about from clients. One of them is a decrease in new rep ramp time. So we hear from clients that there's anywhere from like a 15 to a 30% decrease in new rep ramp time when they have access to this information. So if you think about a new sales rep coming on board, there's tons of stuff that I need to learn. One of the most important things that I need to learn is, what does the competitive landscape look like? How well do I understand our tool? What are the use cases for our tool? Why are buyers evaluating us? What buyers or industries do we sell the best in? All information that through these interviews, we can provide some really clear information for a new sales rep to come in and read 20 of the last win-loss interviews and understand, okay, I have a good feeling for how buyers perceive us, how they stack us against other vendors in the space, what the relative strengths and weaknesses are. So a decrease in ramp time is always a great ROI to see there, that we'll recommend companies pay attention to. The other one is what we call win-back opportunities. So it's not uncommon that we'll go and conduct an interview with a loss opportunity, and that's not always a lost opportunity from the prospect's perspective. There's a whole list of reasons of why they may have paused their evaluation. Maybe budgets got frozen, there was reprioritization, reorganizations at the company, whatever it may be. It's not uncommon that we'll go and conduct a loss interview and they'll say, hey, actually, we're planning to pick this back up in 3 months. Can you make sure that excuse me, that sales rep reaches out to us? Or they went with another solution. We'll go and interview them, a month or 2 into their implementation, and they'll share some disgruntled feedback with the vendor that they chose and say, if things continue as is, I'm actually probably going to go back out to market at the end of this contract, at the end of the year. And so then we can set them up nicely with some really great tactical information of, hey, you lost this deal the first time because of XYZ. These are some of the current issues that they're facing with the vendor that they did select. If you want to position yourselves better, here's the game plan to go and win this deal, 7 months from now when they're up for renewal. So those are probably the 3 most common areas that we'll point to or we'll look at when we're trying to establish, hey, what was the ROI with this program?
Yeah, that's great. And so, for folks that are, kind of looking at something like this, whether it's, their current processes or kind of evaluating maybe folks that are in the space, what's the one thing that you would say is your main differentiator, your, kind of secret sauce at Clozd? Like, what's the thing that kind of propels you all to the top of the list?
Yeah, I'm going to deviate from your question. I'm going to say 2 things, because I really think there's 2 key areas where we excel. One is in the quality of personnel. So the actual team of individuals that's partnering with our clients and going out and conducting these interviews, they're not fresh college grads where this is their first job. They're very seasoned market researchers with, impressive backgrounds. They've been in the world of software. They understand, a buying experience. And as a result, that translates into a really effective quality interview with these prospects. So the collection of the data is very high quality. I think the second piece, and we only briefly touched on, some of the main aspects of it, but I would say the platform or the tool. So I think where we really excel is making it very simple and easy to consume for individuals to understand and answer those questions again, without mudding the water, without forcing you to get too far into the weeds. Why are we winning and losing, and what do we need to do differently? So we want it to be consumable, not only for RevOps, but we want to, if they choose, we want to see a VP of sales in there. We want to see product leaders in there. We want to see marketing leaders in there. Because winning doesn't happen in a vacuum. If you think about why a deal is won or lost, it's not just the sales rep. It's not just the product. It's not just the price. There's so many different factors that contribute to the outcome of a deal, whether it be a win or a loss. And we want to make sure that all of those relevant parties are getting the information that they need to.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, on the product side, if your product team is getting in there, right, you can understand, are there feature gaps, are there things missing from our solution, the reason why they're choosing other, competitors over us. On the sales side, it can be a great coaching tool, right? If there are sales rep related items that need to be improved upon. And then even on the marketing side, right, it's like, well, what can you learn about one, who to market, like who's a good fit, right? Who do we kind of typically win with, right? Let's market to more of those people. But even understanding, who turns into successful customers, and how can you do a better job of marketing to your current customers. So yeah, I mean, it's every team that could get tons of value from understanding stuff like this. And so with, I guess, last question then, as we kind of wrap up here, is if folks are interested in learning more about the product, the solution, I mean, there's like you said, kind of services plus software. So I'm going to assume there's no sort of like self-serve free trial that's out there. You did mention that you do some pilots, but how can folks, kind of learn more about the tool, the product, the solution? How do they get in touch with you? How can they, kind of get something on the books?
Yeah. So if anyone has, just general questions about win-loss, just trying to, again, very exploratory, trying to get their toes wet, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, shoot me an email. My email is Cameron@clozd.com. Always happy to help answer questions. The website as well, Clozd.com, has some really great use cases, customer stories, blog posts that can be really insightful if you're just trying to learn kind of win-loss 101 and or exploring what the options are there as well. But one thing that we'll commonly do, and again, for whoever wants to take us up on the offer, is let us go do a free win-loss interview. So for companies where they haven't outsourced this, they haven't really ever taken a really formal approach to win-loss, one of the things that we'll typically offer is let us go give you a sample of what we can go do at scale. So it's a really low friction process. Again, happy to walk anyone through what that looks like. But If anyone is curious what an actual win-loss interview looks like, we'll go and do one for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I would be. So yeah, I'm sure others are. Well, that's great. So Cam, thanks for kind of walking us through the Clozd solution.
Oh, so close. One sec.
Clozd, yep. I think it's gotta be like a 15-minute.
I know. I was just looking at that, trying to figure out how long has it been.
All right. Well, yeah. So Cam, thanks for walking us through everything, my friend, for telling us more about Clozd, the problems that you solve, the real problems that you solve for folks in revenue operations, and kind of how you solve for them. So I really appreciate it, my friend. For everyone watching, thank you as well for kind of tuning in. But Cam, I'll let you run, and I will see you all on the flip side. So take care, y'all.
Thank you.